Hey guys, what's up? Alrighty, today we're gonna do the 425 deathless TOA. And before I begin, I kinda want to talk about something. So if you've been keeping up with these guides, these TOA guides, you might have noticed that it's sort of a progression series, right? So we started at 125, then we went to 300, and then 350. And now we're at 425, and after this, we're going to 500. And if you've noticed, there's been two things that have been happening throughout this progression. One is our gear gets slightly better with each step up, and the second is that the invocations, for the most part, have been staying more or less exactly the same, and we just add a little bit here and there. We add like a couple invocations here and there to bump it up from a 300 to a 350 or a 350 to a 425. And the big thing that I've noticed people asking about is, when are we going to start using the yellow keris? When are we going to introduce the yellow keris to the system? And my simple answer to that is, we are not going to. We're not going to be using the yellow keris. We're not going to use it here, and we're not going to use it in the 500 either. And it's going to be very similar gear setups to what we see here, regardless of the raid that we run. And the reason why is because I know a lot of people think that the yellow keris is like necessary at these high info raids, especially a 500. Right? It almost becomes mandatory. But I kind of disagree. And the reason I don't like the keris is because as soon as you implement the keris into your setup, the entire dynamic of the raid changes. Now you're actually you have an entire new method of healing. Instead of using your brews or even your ambrosia, depending on like if you have dehydration on, you're now relying on your yellow keris as your healing method, and it changes the entire thought process between how do I heal, when do I heal, and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like it makes it very stressful, and it adds an entire new element of challenge to every single room in the raid. It's not like it just affects one or two rooms, right? It affects every room in the raid, and it makes mistakes extremely punishing, right? Like if you accidentally mess up, if you misclick or something, and you take like a 45 or a 50, that could be it. That could make it so if you didn't have your yellow keris charge, even if you didn't die from that one simple mistake, now the chip damage could just whittle you down, and it might be game over. So I don't like the yellow keris. I think that I like the idea of baby steps. For instance, if we could beat the 350, then we can just add a few more challenging elements to the raid, which are mostly just like, just standard invos, which we might have seen before. And as long as we can deal with multiple different challenges at once, then we can find success. At least that's my opinion. And if you were wondering, when I did my 500 run, I didn't use a yellow keris. I did the same kind of method that we're going to be showing off in these next few high info guides here. So yeah, with that said, we're not going to be bringing the yellow keris, and I do want to point out some of the gear that I'm bringing. So gone are the days of using pretty budget gear, right? Or what some might consider budget gear. I've been bringing a buff up to this point. We finally upgraded to Missouri and its bow. I've been using Arims up to this point. We're finally upgrading to Ancestral. And we're busting out the Quiver, and we're busting out the Inferno Cape. Now, these come from pretty high level content. Inferno, Coliseum, Cox, and TOA. And I have guides to teach how to do all of these things. I have simple beginner-friendly guides to the Coliseum, beginner-friendly guides to Inferno. I teach how to do Solo CoX with no experience. If you've never even tried chambers before, I have guides for that, and they go up through intermediate and even some semi-advanced strategies as well. Like we hear terminology like maybe 3-1 ohm or 4-1 ohm or maybe 4-1 range head ohm. And yeah, I teach these methods. I have guides on these methods. And I'll have some of them linked below in the description if you are interested into getting into some of that other high-level content. But this is a TOA guide, so let's just jump into it. But yeah, we will be bringing new gear, and because we're not relying on the Keris, the light bear becomes less and less of a necessity. Because we're not going to really be relying on that healing from Keris. So I'm actually going to be bringing some really good mage gear. I'm bringing the Mage's Ring and more or less max mage. I have pretty much max mage in my inventory and whatnot. But yeah, let's go take a look at the info. So what's different from this relative to the 350 that we just ran in the previous guide? And that's that now we're going to be bringing Need Some Help. So Need Some Help is, it'll affect how many supplies you get from the little ghosty. But it's not really that noticeable. It starts to become really noticeable when you start using these two, but just the regular basic Need Some Help, it's not hugely noticeable. Um, Bumping up from the 350, we're also going to be bringing just more or less all of the boss invos except for Akkha. So now we have more overlords, so Kephri transition phase will be a little bit longer. We're bringing Upset Stomach for the Croc. Akkha's just the same. We're just going to be doing Infinite Butterfly on Akkha, so we're not taking Double Trouble or Keep Back. We're not going to be taking these. And as for Baba, we do have the Gap on. So Gap is now on for Baba. And finally, we have a full Invo Warden. And this will bump us up to 425. And yeah, we're going to send this, and we're going to do it deathless. So yeah, let's just jump into it. We'll pre-pot it, and let's send this bad boy. So before we begin the raid, I kind of want to bring this up just one more time, but I kind of already touched on it that I am wearing the Inferno Cape and the Quiver, and we've upgraded some of our gear. So now we do have the T-bow, and we've swapped out of Crystal and Bofa, and we're now bringing T-bow Missouri. I want to make the point that this 425 raid, it can definitely be done with the Bofa. The only rooms that we're really going to be using range in are this first room, the Croc, Zebak, and we're going to be using it a little bit during P2 Warden. And the Croc is basically, the Croc should be, you know, unless you make mistakes, it's a 0 damage room. So the T-bow just kind of speeds things up a bit, but if you're happy to go with a slightly longer raid KC, you can just bring your Bofa. Bofa's not really a big deal. As for Warden, we're probably going to be seeing at least a 3-down Warden, possibly a 4, depending on what kind of supplies we get from the Ghosty. But yeah, Bofa will work. So Bofa will definitely work. As for the Inferno Cape and the Quiver, like I said, I have guides on how to get both. They're very beginner friendly. And as we jump into Zebak, throw me that like, throw me that sub, and here we go. So we'll drop that first. We'll drop that one potion and get that BGS spec off. Looks like we can get 2 BGS specs off real quick, and then we will swap into our range gear, whatever we have, right? So like I said, you could use your Bofa, use your T-bow. T-bow is going to speed things up, but the nice thing about Croc is there isn't really any chip damage. The only chip damage that comes from Croc is during his little blood special attack, which it looks like he used right there. So it hit us an 11. And that's really the only chip damage that we take throughout the fight. And he's only level 2 right now, right? So I think at level 4 he definitely uses the blood barrage a little bit more, just simply because he attacks more often, like he attacks faster. But since we do first room Croc, he's pretty easy, and using that Bofa, it's not really a big deal. So don't feel intimidated by the fact that we're using a T-bow. You definitely don't need it. You're not going to notice a huge difference in the raid if you have the Bofa instead. But as we move into these higher level raids, I totally, 100%, I suggest the Shadow. And I think, as I mentioned, I'm actually bringing, I got pretty much, I got like max mage right now. So I have, I'm using Ancestral. I'm actually even bringing the Mage's Ring. The Mage's Ring is probably the least of our concerns, but I've definitely upgraded to Ancestral. We were using Arims before this, and if you only have Virtus, which is a significant, it's about half the cost, maybe even less than half the cost, or I should say more than half the cost of Ancestral. I think Virtus will work just fine. But you probably don't want to be bringing Arims to these higher level 425, 400 plus info raids. Like, I guess you could. But it's gonna help a lot because magic is probably it's probably our best attack style in TOA because it's gonna help a lot with not just with P2 Warden but especially with P3 Warden, right? It's gonna help a ton with P3 Warden. It's gonna make it so there's less time that we have to spend on those very last tiles during the enrage phase, right? So the better mage gear you have is hugely beneficial when we start reaching these higher level Invo raids. But like I said, I think the mage gear is probably the most important. I am bringing the 6-way mage swap and only a 5-way range swap. But you know, you can bring that both. But I highly recommend having that. I highly recommend having that mage gear. So yeah, with all that out of the way, let's talk about the croc a little bit. So this time, we actually have upset stomach on, or sometimes I just joke about it, but I call it rumbly tummy. So yeah, we got upset stomach on, and what that is gonna do is it's gonna make it so when he does his special attack, we gotta hide behind the rocks. Your little jugs that you pop, they pop in a much smaller radius. They pop in only a little 3x3 radius. So you have to be much more precise with how you pop your little white jugs. But really, that's the only difference with Croc. And we do him first anyways. So since we are bringing upset stomach, it might take a little bit of a learning curve to learn how to do it. But it's not really that bad. Once you get it down, you know, you can really run upset stomach on pretty much any info, and it starts to become free. Sometimes it's a little sketchy. But yeah, it's not too hard of an info, and that's really the only difference that we noticed with Croc. So yeah, we'll pick up our Super Restore and we'll go on to the next room. And we, for our 425 raids with these kind of invos, we're basically always going to do the same order, right? We're going to start with Croc or maybe Kephri, I guess if you want to start with Kephri. But I think Kephri's actually easier than Croc. So we'll start with Croc and we'll go to Kephri. And then once we finally get our Salt is when we're going to move on to Akkha. And we're always going to save Baba for last. And the reason why we're going to save Baba for last is because we will be doing the red X method. So it really doesn't matter what level Baba becomes. Baba could be level 4, he could be level 5. If for some reason he even hit level 6, I don't know if that's possible with these invos. But if he did end up hitting level 6, it really wouldn't be any difference. So the level of Baba doesn't really matter, simply because we will be doing the red X method. And I've talked about it before, and I'll have it linked in the description. But I have a Red X video. I have a Red X guide. I will the techniques that I show in the Red X guide to get it set up, like to set up Baba during each of the transition phases. The techniques that I show in that video are the actual techniques that I use. You know, so it's not like, you know, they might be simplistic, or maybe we could call them beginner friendly, but honestly they are the techniques that I use. They're the techniques that I'll be using in this video. They're the same techniques that I'll be using in the 500. So it works just fine. If you can learn those methods in setting up Red X Baba, you can basically use it for any info you want. But here we go. We're moving into Kephri. And this is what the Super Combat Potion is for. So we did bring a Super Combat Potion into the raid, and the entire potion is brought for this one single room. So if for some reason you find yourself brewing down, right, maybe something bad happened, right? Maybe you got hit by a melee, or somehow you didn't trap them correctly, or maybe maybe your prayer dropped, maybe you got hit by a bomb, and you had to brew down. This is the room to be using your super combat potion. because we will be dropping it or depositing it after this room. So you're free to actually use all 4 doses. You don't need to be overly conservative with your super combat potion in this room. Use it as much as you want. Use as many doses as you want. But our goal is that before, especially because we have more overlords on, we want to make sure that we do the full melee trap before the first boss spawns. Now, it's kind of hard to miss that or to hit that DPS check anyway, as you just saw right there. But you definitely don't want to push Kephri too early. You want to trap that melee. So if for some reason, you know, you're just popping off, you're doing really good damage, you know, RNG is just on your side, don't let it screw you over. Make sure that you get that melee trapped before going into transition. So you can see right there, we do have the melee trapped. We trapped him by standing on those 2 yellow tiles that I have marked right there. That will throw the mud on those yellow tiles. And that will cause the melee to get trapped, not just for phase 1, but he will also be trapped in phase 2 as well. So yeah, the melee is permanently trapped at this point, and then you just gotta mage him down. Use whatever mage gear you have. We'll talk about that again. I definitely recommend the Shadow. If you're going for these higher invo raids, you know, I don't even know if they're worth doing if you don't have the Shadow. I don't know if the time loss using either a trident or a saying or something like that. I don't know if the time loss is worth it. So I definitely recommend having a Shadow for these higher invo raids. I assume that if you're doing these higher invo raids, you're going for kits, or maybe you're running 400s, trying to do some money raids, trying to make some real money. But gosh, like I said, I mean, maybe it's worth it. I guess I don't know, but personally, I didn't start running 400 plus until after I had a Shadow, and I guess I really don't know what more to say other than that. I definitely do not run these higher invo runs using budget gear. I'd probably be sticking to 300s or maybe even 350s. But you can see right here what I'm doing is I'm actually doing some semi, you know, some non-standard dung mechanics, right? Where instead of stacking them in the corner, I'm kind of stacking them to the side. I run all the way back right next to that one line of dung that we have right there. I kind of run all the way back. And that way, instead of throwing it in the corner, she kind of stacks it up right there. So we'll see it again. And it kind of stacks it right here. And it's not necessary for these 400, 425 runs. It's not super necessary for these kind of runs. But what it's going to do is it's going to prep us for those 500s. And if we're doing 425 simply for the kit, I assume that our end goal is to get that 500 because we want that Fang kit. Fang kit's super cool. Fang kit looks awesome, and I'm assuming that if we're trying to learn 425s, we are ultimately we're going for that 500. We're trying to get to that 500. And that's what we're going to be doing in the series. We will be doing a 500 guide. That's actually going to be the very next guide that we make, and it will be the finale of this TOA series. So I'm getting really excited about that. I'm getting excited to run this 500. And I guess we can talk about the Keris again, right? So we're not using a Keris, and I kind of touched on it in the very beginning of this video. Why I don't like the Keris, and I wish that there were more videos out there that showed that the Keris isn't necessarily the only way, or that so highly recommend as they do the Keris. Because I guess if you're going like for a speedy run, like if you're going for that speedy 500, probably Keris is the way to go. You know, I'm not going to deny that. I think Keris is probably a slightly faster way of going about this, especially because you're not brewing down. You can use your prayers more just simply because you have all those extra restores. But if you're just going for that 1KC, if you're just going to get your Fang kit, I mean, honestly, like, I don't think that speed really matters. If it takes you 45 minutes, if it takes you 50 minutes, if it takes you a full hour to get your 500 done, I don't think it really matters. You know, the end goal is, or the end goal is the same. The prize is the same. It's not like you get anything special by saving 10 minutes on your run. So yeah, like I said, we won't be using the Keris. We're not going to use it here. We're not going to use it in the 500. And I really like that. I like it because it gives us the opportunity where we have those brews. We're able to bring in as many brews as we feel not only necessary, but as we feel that we can fit into our inventory. What is that? Whether it's 5 or 6 or 7 or, you know, however many brews you need, you can fit them into your inventory. Because the only reason you don't bring them, honestly, for most Keris runs is because you're bringing dehydration. You know, when you bring dehydration, when you choose to bring the dehydration invo, you're basically forcing yourself to not use brews. That's like that's like the definition of a dehydration run. That's why a lot of people do bring yellow Keris. Now, I suppose if you want to bring that yellow Keris as like a backup heal, you know, a last resort, uh, you know, full heal, and you're comfortable with that, by all means do it. I think it's a really nice option for a full heal. You know, it's almost an ambrosia, right? At the cost of your prayer, so it's like half an ambrosia. But it will get your HP completely full. So there is benefit to bringing the yellow Keris. And if you feel that you're going to do better, if you feel that it's going to be easier for you to bring it, the yellow Keris as a backup heal, then by all means, I recommend it. You know, bring it. I think that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But to have it as your main, not just your main, but your only source of healing, to have that yellow Keris as your one and only means of healing, I feel like it's so stressful, guys. I feel like, you know, you're constantly worried about your health. You're not allowing yourself, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to make a mistake, you know, and if you do accidentally make a mistake, it's devastating. But yeah, so, Kephri's down, and we're gonna look at what we got. And it looks like we're getting that salt in chaos. We could take that double salt for power, but because we're red Xing Baba, we can probably just take that chaos salt. We have 5 restores. I mean, we got 4 restores and a Sandfew, right? So we got 5 restores, and it was offering us an ambrosia, which is really nice. Especially because since we are taking need some help, we're not guaranteed to get 2 ambrosia out of a life pack. You know, I think we could get 2 ambrosia out of a life pack, but we're definitely not guaranteed it. So I think having that extra little bonus ambrosia, it might come in handy. It might be useful, especially when we get into the very end of Warden, like especially like late game P3 Warden, or maybe even in Rage Warden. You know, having that second ambrosia might be really beneficial. So we are opting into taking the, we did take Chaos. We didn't need the Restore. The extra brew is nice, I suppose, but really, you know, we are gonna get the, we are gonna get the 1 salt, which is really all we're gonna need. So we're gonna use 1 for Akkha, and we will end up using 1 for, Warden as well. And if we can kill Akkha somewhat smoothly, we might even be able to carry some of that, we might even be able to carry some of that salt into the monkey room, which is going to make the monkey room a little bit easier as well. But yeah, like I said, we are going to drop that super combat by the time we get this far. After we beat Kephri, we no longer need that super combat. And we're going into Akkha. And our goal in these high invo raids, once we start getting into these higher invo raids, we want to be butterflying for as long as possible. Ideally an infinite full phase butterfly. Ideally, you know, and it's not as important in these 425 raids, but the way that I will be teaching 500s, the way that I'm gonna suggest doing 500s, and we'll see that when we get there, right? You know, I think you guys are definitely in for a little bit of a surprise when we do our 500 runs. Probably going to be a method that you guys have not seen before. It will be unique. I haven't seen any other guides out there that are going to run the 500s the same way that I do. Not only is it going to be a No-Keris run, I know there's a few videos out there that try to show off how to do a No-Keris run, but I'm pretty sure mine is going to be even different still. And we'll talk about that when we get there. So we'll save that for another day. We will talk about the 500 when we get there. But for this 425, you know, like I said, we want to do that infinite butterfly, which is what we're trying to do right now. We want our butterfly to be as absolutely pristine as possible. We do not want to be messing up. We want to know at this point how to do quadrant transitions when necessary. We want to learn how to do the quadrant transitions. We want to know how do we make it so that Akkha never hits us. And basically, we want to do that infinite butterfly. And if we mess up in a 425, it's not the end of the world. If we mess up our infinite butterfly Akkha on a 425, we can just keep going. We can keep going. By the time we make it to the 500, it's going to be very important. It's going to be pretty crucial that we know how to do an infinite butterfly. So 425s are a really good way to start honing our skills. If we are first getting into butterfly and we don't have it down pat quite yet, we can always practice in lower invo rates. But you can see right here, we are transitioning to the third quadrant. And that was actually a pretty smooth transition. So Akkha did not hit us. We had a very smooth transition into the third quadrant. And we are actually running a perfect butterfly right now. There's been no mistakes, no flukes. And I highly recommend that by the time we make it into these 425s, we learn how to get these butterfly Akkas down as best as possible. And you can see right there, I actually did get hit. So we did get hit in the third quadrant while he kind of lagged out to use his special attack. And I think we didn't miss a DPS check, but because of his black orb special attack, we did take a little bit of damage. So we're going to use this time to be brewing up while we do our butterfly. So knowing how, or getting that timing down to click our supplies and get our HP back up, and we got to get our prayer back up. But we're going to want to be able to learn how to do that. We're going to want to do that while running the butterfly. And I know it can be a little stressful, you know, getting your prayer back up or learning how to eat those brews or supplies while running a butterfly. You know, it's an extra set of ticks. It's an extra couple ticks. But we're gonna want to learn how to do that. Not just for the 400, not just for the 400s and 425s, but we're really gonna want to learn how to do that by the time we get to 500s, because our 500s, our Akkas need to be basically perfect. Our Akkas need to be as absolutely good as possible. And we can see right here that Akkha actually did transition. What's it called? We have Stay Vigilant on, so we do need to be wary that if he hits us, he has the potential to change. And basically at this point, we're just doing normal Akkha. Luckily, we don't have to worry really about DPS checks right now because that fourth Shadow Clone is down, and we can either kill him with range, finish him off with range, or luckily he did transition back into his melee phase, so we can actually just jump right back into our butterfly and finish off this phase. And as we go into the enrage phase, we're gonna want to have our HP high, you know, and we're gonna want to take him down as fast as possible. Now at this point, right, we're in these high level invos. We're finally running 400s and 425s. And at this point, we can't just brute force our way through Akkha Enrage. He has too much health. You know, we're not just going to be able to spec him down. We're going to have to do a little bit of running from quadrant to quadrant. And it's going to be important that we try to dodge those white orbs. We can't just stay in place and try to brute force them down. We're going to have to dodge some white orbs and eat as necessary. Because since we're going into Baba, you know, our supplies aren't super necessary right now. We're not going to really be using any supplies, or very, very few supplies, I should say, at Baba himself. And therefore, so the monkey room is really the only challenging room where we might have to be using some supplies left. So if you have supplies to use, feel free to use them in the at Akkha, because as long as you have enough supplies to be able to make it through this monkey room that we're entering right now, you should honestly be good to see Wardens. And hopefully at that point, it's just going to be, can we beat Wardens or not? You know, we're either gonna beat Wardens or he's gonna beat us. So, I think that Baba, if we learn how to do the Red X method, if we know how to do the Red X method, Baba is basically the free room. If we know how to set him up for Red X consistently, he's basically free. We're not going to be using supplies. It doesn't matter what Baba invos we have. He's always going to be the same as long as we know how to set up that Red X Baba. And we can see up in that top left corner right there that he is level 5. But it's not going to matter. You know, Baba, regardless of his invocation level, he's always going to be the same. So we're focusing on this monkey room, and we all know monkey room. It doesn't really get, nothing really changes with the monkey room between these, between invocation levels. The only thing that really changes as we up our invocation is that the monkeys maybe they get a little more health, and maybe they're a little more accurate, maybe they deal a little more damage. So, and I know the monkey room, it just sucks in general. So we need to, you know, as we start leveling up our invos, we're gonna need to get better and better with swapping to a decent prayer. And that's wave dependent, right? So we're gonna want to be able to swap our prayers more efficiently. So we got a lot of melees on us, pray melee. If not much is happening, but we have like a ranger on us, we're going to want to pray range. But knowing how to and when to swap our prayers is going to become more and more important as we upgrade into these higher invo raids. But we're making our way through Monkey Room, and we'll talk about the Ancients really quick. You can see that we are still bringing Ancients. You know, I think a lot of people suggest, you know, why not bring Thralls? But I bring them specifically for this room. I think that the Ancients are great. I think that the splash, or not the splash, but the AoE effect on the melee monkeys is absolutely awesome. I think that it's great. And the bonus healing effect that we can get from casting our blood spells is, I mean, I think it's amazing. I think, you know, I'm not really worried about DPS. I'm not overly worried about, you know, getting a little bit of extra DPS thanks to my thralls. I assume that the goal of running these higher invo raids, maybe they're to run money raids. Maybe we're trying to run as fast as possible, and the thralls would help with that. But if we're just going for our kits, you know, if that's our goal, if our goal is to get kits, I mean, man, just bring ancients. I don't think saving a few extra minutes, like not even a few, like maybe saving a couple minutes, right? Maybe saving a couple minutes. I don't know if it's necessarily worth it if our goal is to simply do a one and done and get that kit. Which I feel like a lot of us are honestly trying to do. But here we go. We do a red X Bob and we hit him once and walk in 3 tiles. So that will instant set Red X Baba. That's how we instant set him. We have to hit him one time on the engage. Hitting him one time on the engage is actually necessary. So make sure you do it. And then you're going to begin your Red X and you'll start by walking in 3 tiles, right? Once the Red X is set, which is where we're at right now, we're only going to walk in 2. And at this point, Baba is basically the same thing. You know, if you want to use your special attacks, you can get your special attacks on him. If you want to use offensive prayers, I suppose you can. You can definitely use offensive prayers, but you have to remember that that will come at the cost of supplies. And if you didn't get good supplies on your very first ghosty, and you know, I'm pretty sure, what did we get? We got a salt, we got an ambrosia, and we got a bunch of brews. So we actually didn't get any super restores on our first supply ghost. So if anything, if we're running low on anything, we're running low on restores. So because this boss is a 0 damage room, unless you're really trying to speed things up, you don't need to use any offensive prayers. You don't even need to use the defensive prayers. I have my protect from melee on just in case, because if I do make a mistake, you know, I don't want to get just slapped off prayer from Baba, just in case I do make a mistake. So I will be keeping that offensive prayer on, I think, or I mean, my defensive prayer on, just in case, because you never know what can you never know what can happen. And personally, I like to play more safe than sorry. I like to play safe with my supplies. I like to play safe with what kind of prayers I'm using. I personally just like to play safe and defensively. and not necessarily trying to save, you know, a minute or two here or there. You know, I guess that that's not my top priority. Not that it's not important, you know, I guess, I mean, you know, you beat the raid faster, you get purples faster, you know, all that good stuff. I get it. But if our goal is just a one and done kit run, I don't think it matters, you know. I don't think it matters if we save a few minutes as long as we can actually beat the raid. But here we go. So we're going into his first transition. And this is a great time to actually heal. You can see I'm going to use a blowpipe spec right here. And that will get my HP back up to full. So if I did take, you know, if I entered the room a little bit subpar because I didn't get a full heal off in the monkey room, or maybe I took a little bit of damage from potentially, you know, when I was trying to set up Red X. If I was trying to set up Red X and I took like a little bit of damage from maybe like a partial stomp or something like that, you can always use your blowpipe heal on those boulders because it's going to give you a max heal, or not a max heal, but a max hit. So at this point, we're trying to set up Red X, and it's not going great. We definitely messed up the initial setup of the Red X, but we're just going to work our way back around, and we will get this Red X set up. So we're going to have to get that timing down. And what we need to do is we need to watch him hit us, and then wait a little bit. That's what we're doing right now. So we watched him hit us, and then we waited a couple ticks, maybe 1 or 2 ticks, and then engaged the Red X. And that's where we are now. And we ended up getting him set back up. So it was not a perfect transition from the boulders right into Red X. But luckily we had our prey melee on. And if we needed to drink a sip of brew, we can always drink that sip of brew. If we needed to get ourselves healed back up with our prayer, we can always get that back up. Luckily, we had a pretty good monkey room. We definitely had a good monkey room, and therefore we actually managed to carry our salt with us into Baba. We actually carried some of our salt over brew into Red X Baba, which was nice. And I think we did brew down right there. We did drink a single dose of brew, which made us lose a little bit of our offensive stats. But it's no big deal. All that really means is that we're going to have to Red X for a little bit longer, and Baba's just going to take, you know, maybe an extra minute to kill or whatever. And like I said, I don't really think that matters. I would be, I'm more interested in saving my supplies, having as many supplies as possible, going into Wardens, and I'm probably pretty good, right? We still got 3 restores. We got 3 restores, we got 3 brews, and honestly, our little supply thing that we got in our inventory, it's like holding another 5 brews. So we're super duper good on healing items. And this is another reason why, you know, why bring Keris? Because if I have all these brews, I'm sitting on 3 brews in my inventory and an additional 5 brews inside of my supply pouch. And that's 8 brews. So, like, I'm like sitting here thinking to myself, like, is the Keris necessary? Why bring the Keris if I can bring all these additional supplies? You know, if I'm not even stressed on supplies right now. I don't even need to be as careful as I'm actually being. I could definitely be more lenient with my supplies. I could be using them more frugally. I can basically use as many supplies as I want at this point because I know that I'm getting another supply chest coming up, and guess what it's going to be? It's going to be life. You know, so I know that I have a bunch of supplies on the way. So here we go. We got to get that Red X Baba set up. And it wasn't a super smooth transition, but we can get him right here. We should be able to get that 3-step Red X, and boom, he's in cycle. And Baba has now been perfectly set. So the fight is basically over. At this point, I can put my offensive prayer on, speed things up a bit. I could start using my Fang special attack, speed things up a bit. But as long as I just don't fall out of rhythm, if I don't fall out of my cycling pattern, Baba's basically done. So I can speed things up with prayer or whatever. You can see right here, we are going to use those special attacks coming up. And it really doesn't matter. Our goal right now is to just not fall out of cycle. Just don't fall out of cycle. Stay calm. Get that offensive prayer off. And we just need to finish him up because we are about to finish him, go back to our supply chest, and we're going to get life. We are definitely going to be taking life because we are still sitting on one dose of salt, and that should be more than enough to get us all the way through the wardens, and we will talk about that when we get there. But for now, let's just take this boss down and mentally begin preparing ourselves for Warden, the final boss of the raid, and we're about to get our 425 deathless kit. So Bob is going down, and we are going to go get our supply chest, and our supply chest will be life. So we will be getting at least one ambrosia, right? And maybe we even get two. That'd be really lucky if we could end up getting two. But let's go see what we got. You never know. So it looks like we're going to get an ambrosia and more than enough supplies. So we're going to get 4 more restores and the scarabs. We already had 3. I mean, look at all these supplies, guys. Look at all these supplies. We are so good to go. All we need, we don't even need a clean warden. You know, we don't even need a clean warden. We can have a very botched warden at this point. We have more than enough supplies. We have additional supplies inside of our little supply pouch that we can withdraw throughout the fight. And honestly, we have that 2-dose restore that we can just bank. Just throw that back in the bank. We have more than enough supplies. There's absolutely no reason at this point to be failing at Warden due to supplies. Supplies are not going to be our issue. At this point, it's just going to be, you know, having a clean fight, having good mechanics. We do have insanity on, so we got to make sure that we have a good round of skulls. But yeah, at this point, as long as we have a semi-clean warden, and it doesn't even need to be that clean, we can definitely make mistakes. We have more than enough supplies at this point where we could be making mistakes. And really all we have to do is clutch out the kill, and the reward is ours. So let's drink this, or let's eat that salt, and we'll begin the fight. So here we go, phase 1, and this is a full Invo Warden. So we're going to soak up these orb hits. You know, we talk about it every time, but we soak the orb hits until about 66 health. And that's kind of what I always go to. You probably don't have to always go all the way down to 66 health, but that's what I like to do. You know, that's just my kind of standard number. I don't know, it's easy for me to remember. That's where I always go to. But we're going to take down phase 1. And we have 2 ambrosias. Let's talk about it. So we have 2 ambrosias, that's 4 full doses. 4 one-click full heals. And we don't have a Keris, but we have those 4 ambrosia doses. So I will actually be using phase 1 just because it's such a simple phase. It's basically just a supply sink. That is all phase 1 is. It's just a supply sink. But we have so many brews. We have 1,000,000 brews just sitting in that supply chest. So instead of wasting an ambrosia dose, instead of using one of my ambrosia doses, I will actually be taking it nice and steady and slow, and just drinking brew as I go along, keeping my health as high as possible, and I'll even use brew to get myself completely healed up at this point. So I am not going to use any of my ambrosia, and I can just simply use my scarabs, and use my brews, and use my super restores, and get my health all the way back up to full, and be ready to enter phase 2 Warden, which is doing what we're doing right now. And you can see the tile that I'm standing on. And this is always the tile that I kill phase 2 Warden on. This is the tile that I camp every single kill. I always camp that yellow tile right there, and then I run back to it when possible. And the reason why I camp this tile specifically is because it will allow me to avoid, like we just saw, I can avoid the laser special attack using these 2 tiles that I run back and forth between. And I can also avoid the windmill special attack. Those 2 tiles, so that yellow tile right next to me and the blue tile just down to the left of it, those 2 tiles alone will get me through most special attacks. They will get me through both the standard laser as well as the windmill special attack. And it makes them really no-brainers. So at that point, the only challenging special attack to deal with during Phase 2 Warden is the bombs, which is what we're dealing with right now. So he is throwing bombs, and you know, we've all already seen this if we run any Invo raid before, which I assume we all have. We know how to dodge bombs, right? So either just get very, very far away from them, or stand immediately next to them. And we just got 2 tick perfect engages. So here's the thing. Let's talk about this, right? We did not go for power. We did not go for power. We started with chaos. And we did have 2 tick perfect engages, but we're not in max melee, right? So we don't have our full Torba. We're not using full Torba. We don't have the liquid adrenaline. And it looks like we're very close to getting a potential 3 down. So here's what I'm thinking, right? Let's talk about this for a minute. If you are not bringing Torba or max melee, or you lose a tick and you don't get that tick perfect engage, or you didn't end up getting that BGS hit on the very final hit of one of your Warden transitions, you're probably looking at either a 3 down or a 4 down. There's no way that you're going to get this as a 2 down. This is not going to happen as a 2 down, I don't think. It's most likely going to be a 3 down or a 4 down. So let's talk about it, right? We didn't have liquid adrenaline, so we didn't get all those DDS specs off. And it looks like it's very, very close to being a 3 down. And this is kind of why I bring up the gear right there, right? Because if I had full Torba, and maybe if I was even, you know, if I had just a few more max hits, it would have been very close right here, right? He has 355 health left, so it would have been very close. But sadly, because we didn't have the liquid adrenaline and we did not have max melee, right? This ends up being a 4 down Warden. So what does that mean for us? What is the downside of having a P4 Warden? Well, first of all, it's going to add a little bit of additional time to our KC. It will add just a little bit of extra time to our kill. And beyond that, we're probably, just because of the chip damage, we're going to take a little extra damage. Maybe we use an extra dose or 2 of our supplies. But we knew that he was at very low health, so we're not in a rush to finish him off right here. We're not in a rush. So this is a perfect time to get our, get mentally prepared for Phase 3, get our inventory set up, get as prepared for Phase 3 as possible, because here we go. We're going into the final stretch of the entire raid, which is Insanity P3 Warden. So we're doing Insanity P3 Warden. And I'm assuming that if you're doing a 425 at this point, you're already you've already been seeing Insanity. This probably isn't the first time that you're seeing Insanity, but we can talk about it a little bit anyway. So we know that he's going to transition every 20% health. So we're looking at our health up at the top, and he's at about 85% health. And we know he's going to do that first transition at 80 or a sub 80, right? And when he does skulls, I am recommending learning how to do tick perfect skulls. So that's what we'll be doing on every skull phase. So there's a tick perfect skull right there. And I recommend learning the tick perfect skulls because, well, first of all, if you know tick perfect skulls, or if you have the ping, and the ping, I run a lot of my raids. I really do. I honestly do. I run a lot of my raids at very high ping. I run a lot of my raids at like 100+ ping, simply because I'm US based, but I play plenty of the time on UK worlds. I do a lot of stuff on UK worlds just because the ping doesn't really bother me. But I highly recommend, regardless of what kind of worlds you're playing on, I definitely recommend learning how to do tick perfect skull phases. I think it's handy. I think it's beneficial. I think it's very good to know. And I guess you could rely on skull skipping. So skull skipping is a second option, and it's a good backup. Skull skipping is a good backup. But as for me, I will be relying on tick perfect engages. That is my preferred method of doing this boss. So you can see right here, if we look at the bottom right near my inventory, I have about 30 seconds, just about 30 seconds left on my salt. So when my salt runs out, because I ended up, I went with chaos, right? So I don't have another salt. Now, when my salt runs out, it's not going to immediately take away my boost. My boost is not just going to be taken away. It's not like an overload from Cox, right? It doesn't just disappear. But because of that, when my overload, or when my salt does finally run out, I am not going to allow myself to brew. At that point, I will no longer brew because I don't want to brew down here. We can see right now, right? So my salt did run out, and I still have my boost. And I don't want to brew down my boost. I want to keep my boost for the remainder of the fight. He's down to 20%. We're going into that final skull. And so at this point, if I need to heal, if I find myself needing to heal, I will be using one of my ambrosia doses, which is what I just did. So I now have 125 health. My prayer is fully maxed out as well. And I am looking like I am in a very healthy position to be entering the enraged phase of Wardens. And here we go. So at this point, it's all about getting those efficient clicks, making sure that we click our tiles very efficiently, getting our DPS off whenever possible so we don't want to lose ticks, but it's more important to be dodging potential attacks than losing maybe 1 or 2 ticks on your DPS. I know that getting the max efficiency DPS is really nice and it's beneficial and it's helpful, but you also, at the same time, you don't want to be getting hit by the lightning or the prayer orbs or anything like that, right? So it's very important to be getting our footwork down. Footwork is top priority, and prayers and dodging, everything else is our second top priority. And we can ambrosia whenever we want. But you can see right there, if we bring max mage, which is what I brought, we weren't even close. Look at all those tiles we have left. We have 3 rows of tiles left. Look at all of our supplies. 3 full doses of ambrosia. We could have ambrosiaed at any point in that fight, which is why I think bringing the max mage for these higher level invos is so important. It's so crucial. But that's it. That's the 425. Let's go take a look at the leaderboard, see how we did. But that was the, that's a 425, guys. You can see it right there in the bottom left. That's a 425 Invo raid, No-Keris, and we had a million supplies, guys. This wasn't even close. We had 3 full doses of ambrosia left for the enraged phase of Warden. Like, we could have been overhealing and overhealing and overhealing, and it never would have made any difference. So I hope you had fun, and I hope this taught you maybe a way that you haven't seen before to do a 425 Warden. And we're going into 500 next, and we're going to be following a very simple strategy, but I think it's going to be a strategy that you guys probably haven't seen before. And I'm going to leave that little surprise for the next video, but I'll see you in the next one, and I hope you had fun, and I hope you give this a try for yourselves. And good luck, boys. Peace out.